Alright, so I'm looking at merging different sprites into my game, and I'm going to just start out with the player 1 sprite. It seems to make the most sense. So right here I'm showing you a project. This is the lesson 5 different clones, different items project. So this is where I show you how to clone a key, make a locked door. My boundaries aren't super great right here to pull off the key and the door. And so I'm just going to take it up right from there. And so I shared with you this lesson 6 sprite merge project. And I've changed it a little bit since last time I shared it with you. I might change it again. This project is shared with you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this player 1 sprite. I know you don't want to look like me, but I'm going to show you how to make it your sprite. It'll solve so many problems that we might have in the future. But before I do that, let's pretend this project, this lesson 5 project, is your project. And if you were following along, you would have these variables at the very least. So you should probably pause the video right now and make sure that you have this same thing. So like, let's just say your x and y are lowercase x and y. You can double click on them like that to bring up the menu and rename them to capital X, capital Y. Or your last x, last y is different. You might want to change that right now. These are the variables that you probably should have. They should be named this, and they should have this case that you see in the screen. If they don't, pause and fix it so that when you merge in, it'll work. Okay, so I'm assuming you've unpaused. And so here's the project, the lesson 6 sprite merge project I've shared with you. I'm just going to bring in the player 1 sprite. And now I'm going to go into this project, which should be very similar to yours. Yours might be a little different. It's okay, especially if you changed your variables to be named exactly the same as this with the same case. Now I'm going to bring in the player 1 sprite. So I'm just going to drag it in. And for the fun of it, just to show you while we do this, here's a really awesome game, graphics game, that a student's working on. And I'm going to show you how even this game will be improved by bringing in the player 1 sprite. So kind of do this in tandem. Alright, so the first thing you should do now that you brought in the new player 1 sprite, and we'll just go full screen here so you can see it. And we'll start moving around. And there's a big difference. Not a huge difference, but there's a difference between the two sprites. Seems that in the long run, mine will cover more distance quicker. And as you see right in this position, when you release the arrows from moving, it goes back into a rest position, where this sprite doesn't. Okay? And same thing, I'll go over to this game, it'll be the same deal. We'll go full screen. And she's already merged in the game screen. That's okay. Same thing. Cover more ground. It's more animated, has some sounds. You'll be able to turn this sprite into your sprite. Okay? So we're going to do that right now. Alright, so jumping back to the basic game. So here's the player 1 sprite, and it was named exactly the same as mine, so when I brought in this new sprite, it became player 2. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the costumes from your player 1 sprite. If you don't like your costumes, you want to make a new player, it's the best time to jump in, find a new sprite sheet, kind of like this one here, where you have different sprites. What's important is to have different costumes that'll be in all 4 directions. That's important for this to work properly. And what's cool about this one, or if I go over to Miss Klieg's, we'll go into her game. and take a look at her sprite sheet she has on player 1, which will work great. It's perfect. I'll zoom in on this one. Alright, no, that's not the one. It's down here. Okay, yeah. And it has basically 9 costumes. And that, no, I'm sorry, 12 costumes, 4 times 3. And it has a rest position, it has a move right, move left, perfect. So her sprite sheet here will work too. Hopefully yours does too. If you don't have a very good sprite sheet, you really don't like your character, take some time right now. You've invested in your game already, so look for a good sprite sheet that you like, or steal one from somebody else. Here's a good one. She's only using this character. Here's a couple other characters. And has all the different positions that you'll need. Okay? Alright. So moving on. So I'm going to go back to the original project. And what we're going to look at is, here's the player 1 sprite we brought in from me. And the code, it's not super complicated, but it's a little bit more advanced than what I've been teaching you. And just to make your player do all these different things, it would take quite a few videos. So it's just easier to bring in this working sprite that works great. Okay? And instead of having these costumes and me showing you, you need to name them this way and different things, you just paste in the costumes that you need. So if I go to my player 1 sprite, the one that I originally had, which is this Link character, I can see that, for instance, this is his rest position. Actually, he has like 3 different ones, like he's falling asleep, which you could even code in if you wanted to. But this is to the right. So I'm not going to do all of these, but I'm going to copy that costume, okay? And then I'm going to go to the sprite that I brought in, okay? And I'm going to find that rest position. And I don't want to be Mr. Held, I want to be Link. So then I'll paste it in, and I didn't go where I wanted. Yeah, because on the sprite sheet, it's not actually centered. It can't be. They all can't be in the center. There's a bunch of different costumes on one sheet. So every time you paste in this costume, you'll want to center it right there. Okay? And already, you'll find he switches to that costume when he's at rest. Alright? And so then, if I go back in to, my player 1 costume where the sprite sheet is, and it might be helpful just to move the sprite sheet over to the player, it's called player 2 right now. Alright? It might be helpful just to bring that sprite sheet over. Like, I'm probably not going to use any more of this sprite other than this costume. So I can bring this costume in, which is the whole sprite sheet, and I can just delete this now. And I'm going to say, instead of calling this player 2, I'm going to call it player 1. Okay? And all the code that goes along with it is player 1. Of course, it looks like my guy until you're in that one spot, but that's the only costume we've switched out. So now we'll just bring in this costume, alright, and now we have those. So, for instance, I'll do some of these. It's kind of, actually, this sprite sheet, its rest position, I'm not a big fan of any of them because it doesn't have both feet forward, okay, facing down. And maybe, I guess, this one is, or one of the ones without, I guess this is rest position. Okay, so we'll take that, copy it, and then we'll go to the different D's, and that would be D3. That's that rest position. So if I delete that one and bring this in by pasting it in, I'll have to back out to see it being pasted in. move it to the center so it matches up with the others. And I just kind of pick like the chin or something like that to try to keep them in the same position. Okay, so it switches, of course, all the other costumes, but two are my character. But you can see it's already happening where it's becoming your character. Now you might say, well, it's just a little added graphics boost, but there's more code tied in with this player one sprite than just the costumes and the fact that we have three things instead of two, and we go to rest position. Now that you brought that in, if you go into your code and go to variables, there's quite a few more variables, not a lot, but some more new ones already created for you. And mainly it's this direction variable that is dependent on a lot of things. So it's great to bring that in. I could show a video on how to create that. It would take almost as long as to create that variable as to just bring this in and move your costumes to it. And not only would you have that, but you would also have a more advanced movement to your character. So again, we're looking at this game here, and same idea. We're going to bring in some costumes and paste them onto the player one costume here. Now she had named her game with a space in between, so it doesn't exactly match up. So, but anyways, it's okay. I don't see too many glitches happening from that. So basically, every single one of these costumes that you see are me, you need to change to you. And in each direction, 1, 2, and 3, you should be able to find. You don't have to draw them yourself like I did. But when you get to the 4th costume, you might have to do some editing to draw it, and probably definitely the 5th costume in each direction you'll need to edit some to make it look like you're punching. But for now, you could just leave those 2 costumes, right? And you could work on that. I would go into your sprite sheet and do the 3 directions. So let me do a couple on this game so you can see it. Alright? And so this one is going to be really easy to work with because it has them all lined up really well. So I'm going to copy that, alright, and go into this sprite, and I'm going to find that costume, which is down rest position, and I'm going to delete the one that's there and paste this one in. And again, it was on a sprite sheet, so it's not really centered. So I'll move it to center, and then I'll really focus in, almost like it's on her nose. Okay, and we have this crafting menu open, and so we'll look at that. And now the down position for that player one sprite is the same. Okay, and we'll just slowly add the different costumes from the player one sprite that you originally made. Right, you can find the sprite sheet, or you could do it from the costumes you have here. Either way you want to do it. But basically you're moving those costumes onto this player one sprite to pull in the extra costumes. So copy that one. Yeah, and if you brought in my menu when you copy it, kind of goes crazy. It's really annoying. So or find the matching. It's pretty tedious. As you can see, you're going to have all these different costumes to copy and paste out. But it will be worth it in the end. Even the best games, especially this game here, it'll add so much more to it to have that. So in some ways, I'm just going to do a cheat here. This costume here is probably just a flip on the horizontal of the other. So I'm not even going back to copy it there. And now I'll show you. So we have just different movement. You can compare the two movements from the two characters and how that's going to change your game. Where instead, like this one's stuck in that costume, it once you release the button, you go back to your rest position. And as we start putting costumes to our weapons and different things like that, it just is going to make it so much easier if we're all using the same system on our movement. So then our weapons will be interchangeable. We can move them from one person to another because we have all the same 3 costumes opposed to just 2. Right? Hope that helps. It's going to give you some time to bring those different costumes in. And so I'm just going to do one more thing on this one. Not that I don't even know if I'm going to save this, but like what I would do at this point, you know it's going to work. Yeah, you put work into your player one, but we can just take this costume here, that's all the whole spreadsheet, and now we can delete that one, and now we have only one player one. Now, and all we need to do is change out all these different costumes, which is going to take some time. But we have this sprite sheet to help us, and then the attacks, those are going to be, that's the part that's going to be time consuming and you have to draw yourself anyways. Now her weapon won't be picked up anymore because her player one was named differently than mine, but it's just as simple as going into that, going right here, finding the player one sprite, and then here we go, and now we have the sword. It's not being carried around anymore. It's further in this code too. Yeah, some of it will cause a little bit of issues. Let me reset and do that. And each person's individual game will be a little bit different in how it works. So, you know, for Miss Klieg, so far it's going to take more than just changing that. I'm not sure on the fly here what is causing it not to stick with her. And so that would take a minute for me to look into, which I'm just trying to make this about bringing in the player one sprite. It might have been different if I would have named her player one sprite, like renamed it player one right before I started, like I was showing when I first started this video of how you want everything to be named the same to make your merges work the best. Alright, I'm going to end it here. Good luck.